Welcome to Sexy Mom Abundant Life with best-selling author and coach Kathy Williams, a show to help you tap into the support of the universe and access the abundance that's available in every area of your life. Listen in for conversations and tools to create more ease, joy, and possibility with family, relationships, business, and living. Kathy's joyful perspective will help you tap into your own wisdom and create a life of presence and abundance your way. Listen live on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, or anytime on iTunes or at OMFM.
Welcome to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is your host, Kathy Williams, and I'm delighted to have a guest today, HeatherAsh Amara, and I've been reading her most recent book, The Warrior Heart Practice, and it is a gem. So we're going to talk about the Warrior Heart Practice today and how to move from pain, self-doubt, and fear to more clarity and resolution, and ultimately healing and freedom. This practice is based kind of on the heart, where it's 4 chambers that we'll get into today. And I just want to introduce HeatherAsh as someone who's really a shamanistic leader of women's empowerment, and she's done that a number of different ways over the years. She studied the Toltec tradition and is a teacher of that, including teaching teachers. And over the past 15 years has traveled the world working with women, working with the Toltec tradition as well, to integrate, and now is more integrating the feminine wisdom of the ancients into modern life. And you're the author of a number of books as well. So this is your most recent one, The Warrior Heart Practice, and I am loving it. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
You're so welcome, Kathy. So great to be here with you.
So I already have questions from listeners, and one of them is very inspired by you, and she wants to know, what is your biggest inspiration?
That's such a good question. So many things. I'd say just life is my biggest inspiration. I'm so grateful to be in relationship with amazing humans and get to do something that I love so dearly, and to get to spend a lot of time on land that I just purchased. So I'd say those 3 things, like my community, which is so incredible, and just the gratitude for getting to share these teachings, which have changed my life so dramatically. And it's always a huge joy for me to get to share them with others.
I love that. So could you tell us a little bit about maybe what your life was like before learning these teachings? And you said they touched you so deeply. What sort of transformations have taken place?
Well, I grew up in Southeast Asia, and I moved to the States to go to college. And when I first moved here, I felt a really big sense of disconnection, and like something was missing. And I've had that feeling sense in my life in a lot of different times. And so what happened for me is that I got really big into politics and marched for everything and became a big social activist. And like 2 or 3 years in, I realized I'm burnt out, I'm exhausted, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and nothing's really changing. And so that's when I started studying different spiritual traditions. And before I really started on a spiritual path, I had this sense of being an outsider in my own life. And once I started learning the teachings, I started first with European shamanic traditions, really looking at the cycles and how we come back into harmony with ourselves and nature. And it was a time for me where I felt this incredible sense of belonging and community and just wholeness. And when I met Don Miguel, my mentor and teacher, Don Miguel Ruiz, and started learning the Toltec teachings, it was again that sense of coming home, and also finally having tools to let go of the burdens that I felt like I was carrying, the old agreements, the places I kept myself small. I learned so many different techniques and tools to help me really center in my own life and my own experience and start finding just the richness in the expression of my authenticity.
That's so beautiful. And in a world that seems to be so increasingly connected, there is so much disconnect and often a sense that something is missing. So it sounds like these teachings really transformed that for you.
They really did.
And you mentioned something that I think is a very pertinent, present thing for a lot of, in particular, women, and that is it transformed the ways you kept yourself small. Could you say a little more about that?
Yeah, I used to be incredibly shy. I'm still a shy person, but I was really shy and wanted to please everybody and wanted to make sure everybody liked me and that I was doing it right. And there's a way that, like you said, I think especially with women, that we learn to keep ourselves safe by being nice, by being pleasant, by not making too many waves, and by making sure everybody around us is happy. This isn't all women, and a lot of men have this experience as well, but it's part of a lot of times the domestication that we learn. And so as I started learning the Toltec teachings especially, and really looking at what was true for me, what was the difference between what I had learned to be, who I thought I was supposed to be, what was the right way to be, and to start to shed all those different layers to come back into who I wanted to be. And I think so many of us are on that journey right now where we're starting to wake up and realize that what we learned about ourselves and the world is not accurate. It doesn't actually align with a lot of the truest parts of our heart and our experience. And so we have this beautiful opportunity to really learn how to be as big as we are, to be, and as small as we are, to be exactly in alignment with the being that is inside of us, rather than wearing masks or trying to fit in. It makes a big difference.
And it does. And the process that you've created, or that you've sort of evolved and detailed in your new book, The Warrior Heart Practice, is great for that.
It is. I'm really so happy. That book just came out in January, and it's been such a joy to bring it into the world. It was a 6-year process of writing it and crafting it. And it's a really simple tool to help people to untangle the places that we get our story, our thoughts, our mind tied into our emotional body, and how to start to separate those two out so we can live more in truth and based out of our intent, rather than constantly being in struggle and confusion.
So I would love to go through the Warrior Heart Practice a little bit, just briefly. I mean, I used it this morning for something that arose while I was cleaning out the blender after I made my smoothie, and I just started to cry because I realized something that I knew was not true, but at the same time I have feelings and a story around it. And I was like, oh, perfect time to just run to the table, and at the back of your book you have this really, a worksheet essentially, and go through the process and let me uproot this. Yeah. So Now, before we do that, I would love for you to talk a little bit about warrior and what that means, because it sounds to me it's so different from keeping oneself small. And yet, like, before I read this book, I didn't identify as like warrior. That just isn't a word that kind of lands for me until I read Carlos Castaneda's quote that you put in the intent chamber. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Such a great quote. So for me, the word warrior is a really important one for us, especially in in our world today, that we want to cultivate the qualities of persistence, of patience, of absolute focus, of commitment. And those are all warrior qualities. We live in a time right now where we have an excess of warrior, which is why people sometimes, like, they hear the word warrior and they immediately go to the excess, because that's what we've been mostly modeled in our culture. And when you have too much warrior, when there's an excess of warrior, there's domination, there's pushing, there's force, there's power over, and that's out of balance. But we can also be out of balance with not having enough warrior, by having a deficiency of warrior energy. And when we have a deficiency of warrior energy, we don't know how to make boundaries, we are distracted, we're not sure where to put our attention, and we often don't complete things. And so being a spiritual warrior is about using your energy and your awareness to capture your own focus and choose where you're going to put your attention, where you're going to put your focus. And in a world that's incredibly distracted and where there's a lot going on, it's crucial that we learn how to do that so that we can craft our right relationship with our emotional body, our physical body, our mind, and our spirit. We can start to bring them all together.
That's beautiful. I love your definition. And yeah, I mean, because I did equate it with this pushing, domination sort of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to be that.
Yes.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't want the lack of boundaries or distraction that you mentioned that are sort of the other side of the coin. So that is beautiful. And if you don't mind, I'd love to read this quote that just sort of hit home and helped me realize, oh, wait, there's so much more to the idea of warrior than what I've made it out to be. All right. The self-confidence of the warrior is not the self-confidence of the average man. The average man seeks certainty in the eyes of the onlooker and calls this self-confidence. The warrior seeks impeccability in his own eyes and calls that humbleness. The average man is hooked to his fellow men, while the warrior is hooked only to infinity. Carlos Castaneda. I mean, the idea of being hooked to infinity is just so lovely and expansive.
Yes, yes, it's such a powerful quote. And we're all in the process, I believe, of learning how to reconnect ourselves with the sacred, with the divine, with infinity. And in the Toltec teachings, there's what we call the tonal, which is the physical manifestation of the world. So our bodies, our thoughts, our concepts, everything that we've created and manifested, all of that is tonal. And then there's the nagual. And the nagual is the invisible realm, the unmanifest. And everything comes from the nagual into the tonal. But if we're just living in the tonal, we only believe that the physical exists, but there's this whole other realm of the nagual, or of infinity, or of infinite possibilities that's always available to us. But we have to learn how to turn our eyes away from the stories we tell ourselves, the drama in the world, and look to something larger.
I love that. and the commonality of so many of the world's, ancient teachings in, yes, this is what we need to turn our attention to. This is where everything emerges from. And the beauty and simplicity of the process that you created, that you share as the Warrior Heart practice, really helps to do that. So I know we're going to go to break in just a moment, but I'd love for you to just share a little bit about the 4 chambers that we're going to enter and that we're going to talk about in the next part of the show.
Absolutely. So the Warrior Heart practice is based on these 4 chambers. And I think about it like the 4 chambers of the heart. They're all really important. And the first chamber is called the feeling chamber. It's what am I feeling? What's going on in my emotional body? Second chamber is the story chamber. What am I telling myself? What's the story? The third chamber is the truth chamber. And the question is, what do I know is true here? And the final chamber is the intent chamber. And that question is, what do I want? Where do I want to put my focus, my energy? And the way the practice works, really briefly, is you have an issue, something that's come up, an emotion or a place that you're stuck, and you bring that issue to each of the different chambers. How do I feel about this? What's the story? What's actually true? What's my intent? And then we bring it back through the chambers to help unwind it so we're clear about what's the next action to take to create more freedom.
And you tell a beautiful story, a really kind of heart-wrenching story in the book about going through that practice. So we'll talk about that when we return. Thanks so much for being here with me, HeatherAsh.
Absolutely.
And we'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks for listening, everyone, to Sexy Mom, Abundant Life.
Feed your soul with waves of consciousness on OMTimes Radio. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment, a philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hey everyone! Thanks for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life. I'm so grateful you're here. As a listener, you can pop over to meetkathywilliams.com and get 20% off any item in the shop, including videos, energy pulls, even private sessions, by entering the code SMRadio. Also at meetkathywilliams.com, you can download a free Create Your Life exercise and join me for online classes and Hawaii retreats. And if you're stuck, helping you get unstuck is my specialty. I'd love to work with you one-on-one.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and I'm here today with my guest, author HeatherAsh Amara. She's the author of The Warrior Heart Practice, among other books, and has taught in the Toltec tradition and is teaching women empowerment all around the world. And I'm just so grateful to have you here today, HeatherAsh. So we're going to head into the Warrior Heart Practice, but before we do, we're just going to kind of frame it in terms of us as human beings having kind of a big soul and a little soul, and the way that they work together, or perhaps sometimes have a little rift between them, or perceivingly, like it seems like there's a rift. Yeah,
exactly, depending on who's looking. So I think about this as the map of the Warrior Heart Practice. I learned this from Don Miguel many, many years ago. And each of us has these two aspects of self, what we call our big soul, which is the part of us that's connected, that feels really alive, and it's our connection to the Nagual, it's our connection to the divine, it's our connection to God. And then we each also have a little soul, little part of us that is our personality, our ego, our sense of separation. And sometimes we start believing, I have to get rid of the little soul, I have to get rid of my ego, or I have to push this apart, but it doesn't work. What we really need to learn to do and realize is that the little soul is scared, and it's frightened, and it's trying to figure things out in the world. And I often think of the little soul as a little kid that's gotten lost in a marketplace, and it doesn't know where its parents are, and it starts freaking out. You can imagine that sense of being lost and not knowing what to do. And so it then goes, okay, well, I'm just going to have to figure everything out on my own, because there's no help here. There's nobody here to help me. And even though the big soul is like, I'm right here, I've always been right here, I haven't gone anywhere, the little soul turns its attention away from the big soul. And we can see when we're little kids, the little soul and the big soul are very connected. There's this, you see in the little eyes of little kids, like they're so curious and joyous and just in awe at everything, because they haven't disconnected from their big soul yet. Their little soul and their big soul are holding hands and they're playing together. But as we grow older, we start to separate, and that little soul then starts to create this whole construct of who it's supposed to be and how to stay safe and how to follow the rules and what the rules are. And that's really what the Warrior Heart Practice is helping us do, is to deconstruct and help to clear out the places that the little soul has taken over and created these structures that don't serve us. And as we clean those agreements and beliefs and stories up, the big soul can come back online again. Our intuition comes back online, our creativity comes back online. Everything starts to change in our lives because we've reconnected to our big soul.
And that's huge. That's huge. You know, I was on a boat yesterday because I live on the island of Maui, and I was traveling to where I am now, the island of Lanai, and reading your book. And as I was in I don't even remember whether it was the truth chamber or the intent chamber of the process, but I just felt this giant sense of connectedness and feeling of being held and nurtured, and I teared up, and it was exquisite. And I was like, oh yes, this is always present. It's just whether I'm connected to that or connected to, you know, my little victim or judge, right? That the little soul likes to dabble in.
Yeah, it's such a difference to feel that sense of your big soul holding your little soul and helping guide it, helping it mature, versus your little soul totally taking control and wreaking havoc, basically.
Yeah, I have to figure it out. It's up to me. I'm not getting it right. All those messages that we have, that the warrior heart practice helps to unravel. So do you want me to tell the story that I had this morning that I used this practice on, or do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. It's always great to hear. Right. Yeah.
All right. Like I said earlier, it's like I knew this is false, but still there's this little place it gets me. So my feeling, the feeling was sad and slightly scared, and I actually cried. Like while I was there at the sink, I teared up, and tears came, and they just fell. And the story behind that was, I'm getting divorced right now, and that's just a tertiary part of the story. But the story is, I'm not sure someone will want, like a man will be, like a new man, will want a woman with kids.
Yeah.
Kids, right? And so I went into the truth chamber, and there I identified, like, okay, well, there's love available in this moment that I can tap into. That is true, right? People date other people with kids all the time. That is true, right? I am breathing right now. I can be happy alone. I've been happy alone before, right? I mean, uncoupled, not alone, but uncoupled, right? Yeah. These are all true things. Yeah. And then what's my intent? What do I want? And the word arose, connection. Connection is what I want. So then I go back to truth, right? Well, truth, I am connected to all that is. And that's constantly supporting me. Truth, for me, is I'm breathing the support of the universe right now. Right? And then I went back to people date people with kids all the time. And then back to the feeling of, well, I'm still feeling it. I'm still feeling a little sad, but I also feel relieved. So that was my process.
That is great. And it's so easy to see that, like, our mind, part of the story is like, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way, or, oh, it's fine. And so what we tend to do when we're not paying attention is kind of just push the story underground, where it's just simmering.
Yes.
And so then you start dating, and there's this feeling. I can talk about this because I have a similar story around getting divorced and then getting to start dating again. Yay! But that the story then is underground, and so then, like, you're hesitant to reach out to people because this story is running underneath. So the gift you gave yourself, and the gift that we can give ourselves by being willing to, one, just feel what you're feeling, just really be in the emotion. And I always tell people, when you work with the feeling chamber, if you're letting yourself feel exactly what you're feeling, you're not trying to understand it, intellectualize it, blame somebody else for it, you're just feeling sad or whatever you're feeling. And let the tears come, let yourself be angry, let yourself grieve, separate from the story. And then you explore, what am I telling myself? What's the story? And to be really honest about what that story is. And that's where the healing comes, is that you're learning to excavate, to see what else is there. What other stories are there? And so often the stories that we're telling ourselves, there's deeper, older wounds that we can also bring up to the surface to be healed as we move through the process. And I love what you said about the truth, and you stepped into the truth chamber. I always invite people, like, I am breathing, good truth to start. And then to look at what else do I know is true. And your brain's going, nobody's ever going to date you. But the truth is, people date people with kids all the time. I mean, that's just true. And I always tell people, when you're working in the truth chamber, what you have to be really careful of is not to drag a better story into the truth chamber, but to really look at what's true. And there's two ways to know if something's true. One, it resonates in your body, you'll feel it. And two, it's really simple. The truth is always super simple. There's a period at the end of the sentence. And it's so beautiful when you get out of story and get to truth, because your body will go, relax. You still might not know what to do, but there'll be an opening. And then the intent is one word. Where do you want to put your attention? And I love that connection with your word. And so then we take that connection back, truth, and then go back into the story chamber. And now you have allies. You have the ally of the truth. You have an ally of your intent. And now you can really choose how you want to be in relationship to that story. So, sometimes people go back into the story chamber, for example, and realize, the truth is I don't want to date right now. Or the truth is I'm ready to date and I'm excited about it. So, or the truth is that I'm looking for connection, and there's many ways that I can find connection. How do I want to connect now? How would feed me? What connection would feed me now? And then we always close in the feeling chamber, because this practice is so beautiful because it helps you get more and more in touch with your body and what's happening in your emotions. And there isn't a right way to end the practice. Sometimes you go back into the feeling chamber and you feel relieved and elated and excited. And sometimes you go back in and you feel tender or vulnerable, or you realize you have more grief to release. That's all good. It's all part of being human. And there's beauty in separating out the feeling from the story, because that's where we're able to clean and create a lot more clarity for ourselves.
There is, and I found that in the feeling chapter, you talked about, maybe using feeling as a ladder. What's deeper than that? What else is there? What's under that? And I found that was really useful too, because sometimes the feeling we've identified is yes, that's going on, but there's really something else that it's useful to get in touch with.
Yes, so true. So often when we're triggered by something in the moment, there's actually an older wound that's being touched. And to have the courage, that's why I call it the warrior heart practice, because you have to have incredible courage to do this work, because you're facing yourself, you're becoming more intimate with yourself. And heart, a lot of compassion for ourselves as well. And that's what helps us to get free of the heavy stories and the old emotions. And really what we're doing is we're unpacking the backpack of our past so that we can really show up in the present.
Right, and that can be a heavy backpack if we get a lot lighter by letting it go. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and you mentioned it takes incredible courage, and one of the things I really like that you mentioned in the book is we often have exits. Like I would like to explore my emotions, but I'd rather go exercise, or I'm just gonna talk, or become ambivalent. I'll like the physical exits, I'll just clean the house and ignore this thing, or the emotional exits, like I'll just get angry or shut down or leave mentally, change the subject or intellectualize or defend, or even go into addiction, like just start to eat, and I like that you laid that out, because as I started to do this process, I think the first time, I recognized the desire to check out or leave. Like, oh no, I need to do this right now. Instead, it's like, no, you actually don't need to do that right now. That would just be, again, that kind of distraction you mentioned earlier. I'm going to sit with this process and be with this and not go do whatever I thought I had to do.
Yeah, we have to make the space for ourselves. And there's so many ways that we exit. A lot of us spend an incredible amount of energy exiting our emotions through addictions, through distractions, and to be able to turn to face ourselves and to really say, I always say you want to have the energy of like, hi, sweetheart, okay, what's going on? And just slow down and listen to what's actually happening in your body rather than trying to override it or medicate it or numb it out or create drama. I mean, the other thing that we do is we then get involved in other people's drama so we don't have to deal with our own hurt or our own
exactly
energies. So that place of just sitting with the emotional body and not trying to understand it, intellectualize it. No, I love this vision of if you imagine if you're with somebody who's really sick or even who is dying, and the amount of care and presence that you would bring to that person if you were sitting by their bedside is the same energy that we want to learn to bring to ourselves as we start to unpack our old emotions.
Such a beautiful analogy, and it really evokes that sense of presence.
Yeah, we need ourselves to show up for ourselves. We really do.
Yeah. So we're going to go to break now. Cue music. So when we get back, I would love to hear one of your main stories of using this practice. I know in the book you shared a powerful one. And we have a couple more questions from listeners. So again, thank you so much for being here with me. And thank you, everyone.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Hey everyone. Thanks for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life. I'm so grateful you're here. As a listener, you can pop over to meetkathywilliams.com and get 20% off any item in the shop, including videos, energy pulls, even private sessions, by entering the code SMRadio. Also at meetkathywilliams.com, you can download a free Create Your Life exercise and join me for online classes and Hawaii retreats. And if you're stuck, helping you get unstuck is my specialty. I'd love to work with you one-on-one.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Sexy Mom Abundant Life, everyone. This is Kathy Williams, and my guest today is HeatherAsh Amara. Her book, The Warrior Heart Practice, is what we're talking about, and you can find the book at all the major retailers, and as well as getting 2 free chapters at HeatherAshAmara.com. So Heather, ASHAMARA.com, so you can get 2 free chapters. I love this book. I found some of the insights just so powerful and useful. And I mentioned earlier, I had this sense of being held, this warm sense of being protected, and just really was touched by so many of the elements of this practice. So I highly recommend it. And one of the questions I have for you, HeatherAsh, is the intent chamber. So we have these 4 chambers: the feeling chamber, story, truth, and intent. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the relation between will and intent.
Beautiful. So they're very similar in that your intent is the focus of where you want to put your energy, and your will is what allows you to follow through with it. So how I see about it is this way, is that your intent is a line of energy that you are putting into the universe and basically saying to the universe, this is what I want. This is where I'm going to put my focus. This is where I'm committing to. So that line of energy goes out. But if you take no action, it's just going to dissipate. So
I've seen that a lot in people.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just going to put it out there, and then they get distracted, basically. And one of my favorite metaphors of this is airplanes, or no, heat-seeking missiles, excuse me. So a heat-seeking missile is off target 99.5% of the time. And yet they always hit their target. And it's because they're course correcting constantly. So a heat-seeking missile knows where it is, it knows where its target is, it knows where it's going, and then it's constantly course correcting. And it adjusts as it goes along. And that's what our will allows us to do, is you set the line of your intent, and then life happens, and you're going to have to course correct, right? You get distracted, or COVID happens, or like, surprise, big life, you get ill. And so your will then is taking the action towards what you want and redirecting as needed. Woohoo, there's huge thunder here. I don't know if you guys got to hear that, but the universe just...
fun! Yeah. Love that. Beautiful. Okay, so the will is constantly redirecting and redirecting.
Yeah, and helping stay true to course. But you have to know where you're going. Yeah. And in the intent chamber, we're making the intent so simple. So I would love to hear a story of where you've used this practice and allowed it to really shift something for you. Yeah, I'll share, really probably the most intense story that I have around the Warrior Heart practice. I use it all the time still. But I was in a situation where I'd been dating somebody. That's not even the right word. We were friends and we were thinking about dating. That is the more correct. And so for 2 years, we decided, let's just get to know each other. Like, let's just spend time together and get to know each other. It was kind of a novel thing for me because I usually just jumped into relationships. So about 2 years in, we were both going to a retreat that I was teaching. And on the way there, we went separately. I decided I'm in. Like, it's a yes for me. I want to go in with this human. At the same time, he decided it's a no. I don't want to go in with this person. So we arrived at the retreat. Yeah, it was a great setup. My gosh. We arrived at the retreat, and I'm all excited to see him. And as the group is arriving, I was like, that's weird. I have this intuition that he's going to be attracted to someone else. And I'm like, that's not true. I just blew it off. So he comes into the room that I'm staying at, and we start talking, and I just said, I'm in. Can we just spend a week together someplace and just see what's here? And he was like, well, yeah, but I have something to tell you, and I'm nervous to tell you. And I was like, give it to me. And he said, I'm attracted to somebody here, and I think there's somebody better for both of us.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, it was a big thing because I was teaching. And so I then got to watch over the next week these two humans fall in love with each other while I was teaching. And really, yeah, ouch, working to be professional. And there's complications because my ex-husband fell in love with my teaching partner many, many years prior. And so it just evoked all of this hurt. And so one day something happened and I was like, all right, I've got to face this. And I sat myself down and I was like, all right, sweetie, what are you feeling? And the thing about going into the feeling chamber is you want to let go of your idea of what you're feeling or your idea of what the story is to just see what's actually there. So you go in with this openness. So I went and sat myself down and just felt, and what I felt was this intense disappointment. And as I just let myself feel it and just notice where it was in my body, it was in my chest, there was pressure. What I recognized is this is not a new feeling. I felt this before. This feels old. So I just took note of that. Like, this feels like an old feeling. And then in the next chamber, the story chamber, I was like, all right, what are you telling yourself? And there was all sorts of story around, I'm never going to, nobody's ever going to want to be in relationship with me. I'm never going to be the one that's picked. They're always going to pick younger women. I'm getting too old. What am I thinking I should be dating in my 50s? This is ridiculous. You're just making a fool out of yourself. So that was the content. And I just let myself sit with, just watch that content, not trying to change it at that moment, but just like, okay, there's lots of story here. And then I went into the truth chamber. And the first thing I recognized was he gets to choose. The truth is he gets to choose who he loves, period. And I could feel there was something else that was important. And so I just waited. In the truth chamber, sometimes you just sit and wait for the truth to bubble up. You're not trying to like grab it, but there's this beauty when you get still. The truth wants to be seen. And so the next truth that bubbled up was, I get to choose. And I felt this sense of hope of like, oh, I get to choose how I do this and what I do going forward. And so then the intent chamber, what do I want? And what my intent was unconditional love. I want to be able to really love myself, these humans that I'm in relationship with, the situation, even though I don't love it. How do I learn how to be really unconditional with myself and with others? And so I came back around then, looking at the truth, and I came back into the story chamber. And what do you want to do, sweetheart? Like, how do you want to hold this story? Was my question to myself. How do you want to be in relationship to this story? And like the old story tried to grab me again. Like, you're too old to date. You're never going to find somebody. The universe is against you. That was the other thing that I started unearthing of like this old belief of the universe is against me. Obviously, look what's happening. The universe must be against me. And I was like, whoa, that is so not me. I'm like the most optimistic person in the world. But that was there. And so I just sat with it a little bit, and all of a sudden, I got it. And what the rewrite of the story, what the realization was the universe loves me so much, it's giving me a PhD in letting go.
Wow.
It has set this up impeccably for me to let go. And I just started laughing. I was like, yeah, this is a good situation, girlfriend. Like, good job manifesting this. And there was just a sense of delight in my being because I'm like, I can do this. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I can do this. And then the final, going back into the feeling, I still felt disappointed. It was hard. But I now had this like gentleness with myself of like, of course you're disappointed, sweetheart. You just declared your deep love for someone and they said no. Of course you're disappointed. It's okay. So I was able to hold myself and be as graceful as I could through the rest of the week. And it was messy. There are times that it was messy. There are times that I didn't do well. But I had a different relationship with myself because I had separated the story from the feeling, gotten to the truth, knew what my intent was, unconditional love. How do I keep bringing unconditional love? And what I love about this process is even if you don't know how you're going to bring your intent in, by setting that line of energy and committing to it, the universe will help you. Your being will help you. You now have a focus to go back into hard situations. That makes all the difference. Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. What a powerful story. I mean, it just shows that it was a great setup, right? Very, in an emotionally intense environment in which you're supposed to be professional. I mean, that's what's going to work best, not only supposed to, but to have that going on in front of your face. And it just shows, to me, it's like you are so strong, right? And that was not a setup for a weak person.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
wow. And I think we're also, I love this quote I saw from Mother Teresa as just about, I know God only gives me what he believes that I can handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much. And that so often in our lives, these situations arise and we're like, how do I deal with this? But I really believe that we're given opportunities to strengthen and to grow. And we can use everything against ourselves and hurt ourselves and go more and more into story or, cycle the emotions or repress them. And we can do all sorts of things, or we can use every obstacle in our life as a way to get stronger, as a way to love more, as a way to heal our past, to be more present. And that's really the one choice we have, is what are we going to do?
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's easy. And I always remind people, and so part of why I share that story is, doing this work doesn't mean everything becomes easy and light and wonderful. There's still hard things to go through, but we go through them aligned with ourselves and our own heart, rather than scattered or scared. We're allying with ourselves in a really beautiful way.
Right. It's like you were in a crucible, and you can take the situation and turn it into a lump, or you can take the situation and turn it into something beautiful and expansive that creates a better future. And that's what you used the practice to do.
Yes.
So I know we have a lot of moms and people who work with children who listen to the show. How would we start to weave these concepts into being with children and help them use the tools?
There's some great ways of working with kids. So depending on their age, so when kids are really young, you want to give them permission to have their feelings, to not shut them down or try and divert their feeling into something else, but to say, you're feeling sad? Let's feel sad together. You're feeling hurt? Where do you feel that in your body? So to give them permission to feel. And it's also really helpful with young kids to either take photos of them acting out different emotions or find photos of faces, because kids love faces. And then you can start educating them gently around, what's this feeling? Oh, they feel disgusted. What does disgusted feel like in your body or in your face? And so they're learning to be expressive. And then as they grow, you can help them then start to learn the difference between what's an emotion and what's a story. So you can say, I hear you're feeling hurt. And what's the story you're telling yourself? So Molly didn't sit with you at lunch. How do you feel about that? And what's the story that you're telling yourself? So then you're helping them separate out the feeling from the story. Incredibly helpful. And what's true? What do we know is true? We know Molly didn't sit next to you at lunch, period. That's actually all we know. So what other things might be true? So then you get them to start to realize that other people have different experiences and that the stories they're saying in their head are not necessarily true. And as an adult, as a parent, it's really important to also talk about emotion, your own emotions. And and educate yourself around emotions. You know, I always invite adults to print out sheets of different types of emotions so we can get more literate around our own emotional bodies.
I love that. I love it, the idea of adding, well, what's true in this situation? You know, my kids and I talk about our story a lot. You know, what is it you're telling yourself? And you know, especially when it's something like, well, you don't love me, or, you know, I never get what I want, right? Is that really true?
Yeah. That's really true. Let's talk about that, honey.
Yes, and just ourselves being emotionally educated. You know, you do have a list in the book that is so useful because it's sometimes we blanket what we're feeling under something that's more of an umbrella and less differentiated. And I found it really fun to sort of ask, well, is that really quite it, or is it something else? Yeah, anyway. Thank you so much for being here with me and going through the Warrior Heart practice. Your book is incredible, and what a gift it is to the planet.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for all the gifts you give as well. Blessings.
Thank you. Aloha, everybody. Thanks for listening to Sexy Mom Abundant Life. You can find Heather Ash at HeatherAshAmara.com. You can find her books at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Support your local retailer, and and find me at meetkathywilliams.com. Find the show there as well, and on iTunes, Spotify, IOM.FM, and anywhere you like to listen to podcasts. Have a great week.